You ready? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the called public meeting of the Henry County Board of Commissioners for 6 p.m. Tuesday, May 31st, 2011. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for an acceptance of the agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion by Mr. Stamey, second by Mr. Holmes. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the one and only item on the agenda, we have a public hearing and adoption of the 2010-2011 fiscal year budget. Our presenter is Butch Sanders, County Manager, and Mike Bush, Finance Director, and that's handout number 1.
Madam Chair and board members, thank you for having us tonight, where we present a budget which has not changed from the last presentation. I told Ms. Ernst earlier today that this was easily the most difficult budget I've ever been involved in my 29 years of local government experience. The proposed budget is $112,452,443 in the general fund, with a total of all funds of $158,595,427. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. As I said, there is not any changes from the last presentation at the public hearing. I would like to point out, though, we have some guests with us from the library board, and I want to thank Ms. Fuller for the time that she gave both Mr. Bush, Finance Director, and myself in sitting down and coming up with basically a lot of changes to her program and operating hours in order to meet the budget allocation which she has been given, which the board has been given this year, of $1,475,460. I want Ms. Fuller and the board to know that the staff and the board are committed to standing behind them and going to the public and explaining that because of our financial situation and our poor revenue situation, these are the dollars that we could put towards the library. Another 15% reduction this year, and it will lead to cuts in operating hours for the libraries. Basically, all libraries will be open 32 hours a week on a staggered basis, Monday and Thursday from 12 to 8, Tuesday and Wednesday from 10 in the morning till 6 in the evening, and McDonough will be the only exception. It will be open for 4 hours on Sunday for college term paper needs, because that's usually the time when kids need to do their papers at the last minute. I think Ms. Fuller and her staff have worked hard in putting this together, and I understand this will go into effect on August 1st. So we are united in presenting that schedule for the libraries. And should you have any questions, Mr. Bush and I would be glad to tackle those.
Does any board member have a question or comment?
Just a comment or question. As far I know, the numbers have not changed, and neither has the options changed from the last board meeting. How many positions will be cut in these rounds of cuts to balance this budget?
What we have done, we went in and the vacancies which were previously funded were 30. Those have been taken out of the budget. Currently funded and filled positions would be 57, and there would be 9 downgrades in the budget. And Mr. Holder, as you mentioned, the parameters have not changed. There's not a millage increase anticipated in this budget. There are 4 furlough days for every employee included in this budget, and there is no use of the fund balance.
Give me that number again. You said 30 unfilled, then 57. Is it 57 total, or tell me?
57 currently filled positions.
that will be vacant,
Correct.
in addition to the 30 that were not filled.
That's correct.
Okay, and then
Those were
nine,
previously funded vacancies,
and then 9 that were
downgraded.
downgraded. Okay.
Mr. Holder, do you have any additional questions?
At this time, no.
Anyone else with a question or a comment? All right, if there are no further comments, you have before you a resolution adopting the 2011-2012 budget in the amount of $112,452,443, as well as all the other funds needed for us to adopt the balanced budget under Title 36, Chapter 81 of the Official Code of Georgia, and I'll entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Mr. Arletta. Is there a second? We have a motion to approve the budget. Is there a second? All right, motion dies for a lack of a second. So I'll be happy to entertain an additional motion from someone, since we have to adopt the budget before midnight tonight. Ms. County Attorney?
The law regarding the adoption of the budget does have a June 1st deadline. However, there is no penalty in the statute for failing to meet that deadline. And the law interprets such directives to be directory in nature and not mandatory. So there is no penalty per se under the law associated with the failure to adopt it by June 1st, but that is a requirement. And I know that sounds rather legalese in the analysis, but I think we've gone down this road before, which is why I'm so familiar with the requirements, because I've researched this issue in years past.
And your advice would be?
Well, obviously, the board would need to bring this back for another day if it can't adopt one tonight and get a motion on the table to adopt one today. Or we can stay here until y'all work it out, whatever your pleasure.
All right, I'll look to the board for an alternative motion.
It will have to be advertised for 10 days before it can come back, however. Another public, 2 more meetings.
You second it? I think you're going to second it.
No, it's not.
Free, if he
No.
puts it, he's going to second it.
All right, we have 2 choices. We can have a motion to table, or we can have a motion to approve the proposed 11-12 budget in the amount of $112,452,443, and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, if I could, it doesn't bode well for this board to not adopt a budget. It has happened before in the past. It's happened prior to my coming on the board. I don't think the $112,452 and $452,443, speaking personally now, that's not the issue of the dollars. There were several options offered, and obviously the board has directed staff to go in a direction. And I'm not blaming staff for this. But personally, I just think there are better options to balance this budget. And I mentioned it in the previous meeting, my position has not changed. And I think that the board, I don't know what the board's going to do, but I would encourage an adoption of a budget, even though I don't know that I can support it. And I've made that very clear from the beginning, and my position has not changed. But we need to adopt a budget somehow, and if it means tabling it, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened, because it has happened here before. Back in the 90s, I remember that very well. And by the way, I wasn't on the board at the time, but I remember it.
Would anybody like to make a motion at this time?
Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the budget. What we've done is you know, I mean, this is the toughest time that this county's seen in an awfully long time. A lot of hard, tough decisions, and truth be known, I probably should have seconded it. I apologize to Commissioner Letta for not seconding that motion, but I was just, I'm sitting here and I'm reading it, and I'm just kind of, you know, I apologize to you for not making a second to that motion, but I move that we approve the budget.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Bowman. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Arletta. Before I call for the vote, does any board member wish to make a comment about the proposed budget? I know we've heard from a couple of commissioners, and I'd like to give you an opportunity if you'd like to comment before I call for the vote.
Madam Chair, I'll make a comment. I haven't been on this board quite as long as Mr. Holder's been on this board, but I can assure you this is by far the toughest budget that this county's ever adopted. And Mike and Butch, y'all have done great. Y'all have provided great direction along the way. I know it's tough. Every department has given up. I see the sheriff back there. Everybody's came to the table. Library here. It was just an extremely tough budget. And you can see that this board is very hesitant about moving forward because we're not just affecting people's pay, now we're affecting their jobs. And I don't think anyone on this board takes that lightly. I've had a chance to be around BJ a little bit last week, and I kept asking her what was wrong. She said, the budget, and she took this real personal because now we're dealing with people's jobs, and nobody takes that more personal than us because we're making decisions. Everybody out here has got a family, and this is going to affect everybody, including us too. But it doesn't get any easier, correct, Mike, next year?
No, sir.
So I know it's something we've got to do because we've all been elected to lead. It's not an easy task, and I don't think anybody on this board takes that lightly. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Stamey. Anyone else? Mr. Olay?
I echo Randy's feelings. I think, obviously, Randy said he hadn't been on board that long. I obviously am on it a lot less time, but I've done budgets all my life since the 60s, and I can say this is the toughest budget I've had to get involved in as well. I'm not one that likes to see people laid off, lose their job, no more than I'd like to see people have furlough days or anything else that is a reduction in pay. I've had to check my conscience at the door as well, and keep my conscience, I should say, not check it, but from the standpoint of where we're at is we're elected to do the tough decisions, and the tough decisions sometimes people have to be laid off if the positions aren't warranted. I look at this budget, I've talked to some other commissioners, and you know, to the extent we don't need positions, and that's what the department heads have said, these are positions that can be eliminated and services still can be provided, then I look at this budget and say this is the budget we should adopt. When we met the first time and the people had an opportunity to come out and met in another conference room, and the press got a hold of it, at that time I think it was said that we hadn't gotten all the fat out. And I think we had $700,000 still to go. This reduces it by that $700,000, and obviously a lot of that fat, wherever it was or how much it was, had to have been cut to get to this level. I did some homework this weekend to take a look at other county rates, millage rates, and this is out of the, Googled it, and it was 2010 Georgia ad valorem, or Georgia rates, millage rates. And I looked at our neighboring counties, and of course we're at a combined $14.75 when you consider the two for water and one for the hospital. So we're $11.75 for our county. When I compare that to Clayton, their combined is $15.227, and I know we're all conscious of this because of business development and everything else being competitive. DeKalb is at $16.86 with all the various things they have. And also, if you'd read the articles that were written starting in January from the CEO, saying that they should increase the millage by 2.32 at that time to the 16. They voted in February not to do that, and so everybody was very happy. They came along in April and again in May, and they're saying they're $25 to $30 million short, and they're now again looking at another millage increase, and I've heard a figure as much as $4 million. But in comparing again to them, when I look at Spalding, they're at 18.98, and Butts is 17.41. I'm not making ours to say ours is great because we're there. I'm just saying competing counties. There are counties less than ours, of course, and we would like to get ours down, but one of the counties that is the cheapest millage I found was Cobb, and they're at 9.6. But the interesting thing about Cobb is that their FY11 property revenues assumed a 3.75 growth in the tax digest, and in the 12, they're assuming a 4% tax digest growth. So while our digest has gone down the equivalent of, 20% or so in the last couple of years, their digests have gone up to allow them to keep a 9.6 millage rate, which again to our 1175 is about 2 mils less. I'm not at all pleased that we can't bring it down, but I'm not pleased that we've had our property values decline as well. I've had neighbors of mine come to me and tell me that they've gotten their escrow checks back already for the reduced estimated property taxes this year, and question whether we knew what we're doing as far as assessors coming and reducing our property values where they are to cause where we've had to find, $9, $10, $15 million in this budget. So I'm compassionate to the people that are getting laid off. I wish we didn't have to do it. It's a tough decision, and the furlough, I'd like to see our employees make 100% of their pay instead of 96 or 7% of their pay because they're taking furlough days. So we're also looking at the 1,500 to almost 1,600 remaining employees and trying to make sure we can some point get them to where they're being paid 100%, because for the past 4 years with no increases, they're also faced with the same inflationary trends in food and gas and everything like everybody else. So I've been in these situations in business, and it's tough, and it's not exactly the best position I wanted to be in my first term on this commission, but it is what it is, and that's why I voted or went ahead and made the motion to approve this, and we're second Mr. Bowman. So.
I'd like to make one comment. Because truthfully, I was not going to vote for this budget, and the reason I was not going to vote for this budget was there's some issues that I've been very consistent with down through and I'm not going to talk about them now because the majority of the board felt like that those issues needed to go a little different direction, and I honor that, and but I mean I wasn't, and I'm talking with Mr. Holder, Commissioner Holder and myself, because I felt very strong that, we should do those things. So, I mean, my inclination was to vote against it. And, and I thought, well, really, it's not, I don't know that it's fair to the other members of the board for me not to vote against it, because I simply felt like one issue that we should do something different, and that we shouldn't fund certain programs, basically, is what it amounted to. And but on the same token, I feel like that, as Mr. Commissioner Holder put it very well, we should come to one. And so that's the reason that I just wanted that out. I wanted the public to know, I wasn't being lackadaisical. It was some choices that we had talked about, and I'd held a very consistent position the entire time on that. So. But I've made the motion, and I'm, in an effort to move forward, that's why I did it. I just wanted to clear that up. So.
Thank you. It has not been easy, and it's been especially difficult on Mike and your staff, and I thank you for all your hard work that you put into it. I think what makes this most difficult is because we know the employees personally. And we've worked with all of you closely, and we know that this vote is going to affect you in a huge way, especially the ones that are losing their jobs. And I don't apologize for getting emotional, because I love the employees in this county, and I care about each and every one of you and what we do and how we affect you. And there's not a day that goes by that none of us don't think about this. My prayer is that this economy will improve. It's not easy to or to take a $20 million hit to your budget in a 2-year time period. But decisions have to be made. The budget has to be approved. Cuts are going to have to be made. We have to continue to provide services to our citizens to the best of our ability. And we recognize that it's going to be very difficult for the ones that are going to lose their job, and we don't take it lightly. And I just ask that the citizens pray that the economy will turn around. Henry County will see better days in the future. We have a lot of good things going for us, and nobody could have predicted that we would be in this situation that we're in today. There was no way that could have been predicted. And our financial staff has done a great job of finding ways to balance this budget. If this has taught us anything as a community, is that we cannot continue to depend on residential property taxes to fund this county's budget. And we must look for ways, creative ways, to bring industry to our community. That's why Cobb County is able to keep their millage low. That's why their digest has grown. It's because they've been very good at attracting business and industry to their county. And we're going to have to do the same things. We're going to have to be very aggressive to make sure that we do that going forward so that we don't find ourselves in this situation 10 or 20 years down the road. We will probably never see another recession like we've seen. But our kids and our grandkids may very well, and we need to lay the foundation for their future. This has not been taken lightly by any board member, and I want the employees and the citizens to understand that. We have spent many sleepless nights thinking about this budget. And so the vote that we're getting ready to take is not coming without a lot of angst on our part. But we also know that we've been elected to do a job, and we must stand up, and we must be leaders, and we must do what we've been elected to do. And it's going to be very unpopular with some, but that is what we must do in order to do the right thing for our community. So we have a motion on the floor made by Mr. Bowman to approve the budget. We have a second by Mr. Arletta. And if there's no further comments to be made, all in favor of adopting the proposed budget, signify by raising your hand. All opposed. Motion carries 5-1 with Commissioner Holder in opposition.
Could I say something?
Yes, Mr. Holder.
I know it's not right to explain your vote because the vote's cast. But to put it kind of short, 90% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And I think we're going to have some employees, 57 of them, that are going to have the nothing. Am I one that doesn't want to cut? I've probably been more vocal than most of the commissioners about the building department and how a department that had been cut in half only reduced the cost of the department by $400,000. Yes, I've been vocal about it. There have been many things. The library people are here tonight. I could almost assure you that some of the people in the library system that make $10.50 an hour would be willing to take more furlough days than somebody that's going to keep that job at $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, $70,000. The higher paid jobs will probably be where the most resistance is going to come to the more furlough days. I'm not a proponent for furlough days. I'm only saying that in hard times, things should be shared more than what. That is the reason for my voting against the budget. I said it the first time, and my position has not changed. I just think that there were other options that we could have done or could have used to balance the budget. Another thing that be cognizant of And that is, when we're cutting positions at the rate of 57, and Mike Bush made the comment himself, there's no question it's going to affect service. When you get through the second round of cuts, service will be affected. Didn't you? You said that. No question. But we encourage retirement. We encourage the higher paid positions to be rolled away, filled by a lower paying position. But what happens when that occurs? Your experience goes away. So that means you got another wave of a training period that's going to come in, so it's not going to be all savings. There are going to be other training, various other things. So the level of your staff may not be the same. The older people may not give you the production. I won't go any further. Those are some of the few reasons that I was opposed to the budget, and the staff has worked extremely hard, and I agree. And the commissioners, this is the 15th budget that I've been through with the county, and it was without a doubt the hardest one that I've ever been through.
Well, we know going into next year's budget, we already have a $7 to $9 million gap to fill. So next year will be the worst budget this county has probably ever had. And hopefully that will be the worst and the last of them for many, many years to come. The upcoming meetings, Monday, June the 6th at 9 a.m., we typically have a regular board meeting. There are no agenda items for the meeting, so the meeting has been canceled. Tuesday, June the 7th at 9 a.m., we have a regular board meeting. If there's no further business to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Stamey, second by Mr. Holmes. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. We stand adjourned.